Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Buckle in. You're not ready for this one. The moment her coworker called me buddy, I knew he'd seen her naked. You might think that's a strange conclusion to jump to at a work party, but there's a specific way a man says buddy to another man when he's already crossed a line. It was casual. Too casual. His eyes flicked down at my drink, then up at my face like I wasn't even real. I still don't know why I smiled back. The glass I was holding, bourbon, neat, suddenly felt too warm in my hand. The jazz trio in the corner was playing some slow, cheerful nonsense, but all I could hear was the ringing in my ears. The clinking of her bracelet as she reached for the shrimp cocktail. The sharp inhale she tried to hide when he touched the small of her back like he owned it. This wasn't some bar flirtation. This wasn't innocent. This was something old. She never told me she had a history with Declan. And now, at her work party, in front of her entire office, she was pretending like the three of us were part of some comedy sketch. Him cracking jokes at my expense, her laughing too hard, me nodding like an idiot. There was a moment, just one, when she looked at me across the room and her face faltered. It was brief, like a skipped frame in a video. But I caught it. That flicker of panic. Of guilt. And then it was gone. You know that sinking feeling you get when you realize the person you trust most might be hiding something? That's where I was. Only worse. Because this wasn't paranoia. It was proof, camouflaged as politeness. I overheard a whisper when she stepped away to talk to HR. Declan leaned into one of his bros and said, "She still tastes the same." I should have walked over and said something. I should have flipped a table. But all I did was freeze. Because Fallon, my wife, was still smiling. Still working the room like nothing was wrong. Still pretending that she hadn't shattered me just by existing in the same 10-foot radius as him. And I was too weak to do a damn thing. The worst part wasn't the whisper. It wasn't even the touch on her back, or the way her smile lingered too long on his face. It was the fact that she heard him say it, and didn't react. She didn't flinch. Didn't turn to correct him. Didn't look over at me with a shocked, disgusted face like any innocent spouse would if someone said something like that near their husband. No. She just looked down at her drink, ran her fingers around the rim like she was tracing a memory, and took a slow sip. Like she was buying herself time. I don't even know how I stayed upright. My knees felt like paper. Fallon eventually came back, pretending everything was fine. "You doing okay?" she asked, planting a quick kiss on my cheek like she hadn't just wandered off into a conversation that detonated my brain. I nodded like a puppet. "Yeah. Great. Fun crowd." She didn't even catch the sarcasm. Or maybe she did and didn't care. For the rest of the night, I watched from behind my smile as she moved through the party like a performer. Polished. Smooth. Unbothered. Every now and then, her eyes would flick toward me, but they didn't linger. And when they did meet mine, I saw nothing behind them. No recognition. No concern. Just distance. After dessert, she pulled me aside. "I have to stay a bit longer, help clean up. You can head home if you're tired." That's when the pieces clicked. She didn't want me there anymore. I was never meant to stay long. I was a prop. A cardboard cutout of a husband, placed strategically beside her for the first hour to play the role, then gently ushered out when it was time for the real act to begin. "Sure," I said. "I'll get a ride." She smiled, relieved. Relieved. I walked out into the cold with my jacket over my arm and no plan in my head. Just a hurricane of questions. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I waited around the corner. Behind a parked catering van. I know, it sounds pathetic. It was pathetic. But something in me snapped. I needed to know. I needed to see with my own eyes what my gut had already screamed 100 times. It took 23 minutes. 23 minutes of watching people exit the building, hugging, saying goodnight, walking off in pairs. Then came Fallon. Not alone. She exited with Declan. They weren't touching, not openly, but their bodies leaned together in a way that screamed familiarity. She was laughing at something he said. Not just a polite laugh. A real one. The kind she used to save for me. They walked past a street lamp, paused, and then. She put her hand on his chest. He leaned in. I couldn't breathe. She didn't kiss him. But she didn't back away either. She just stood there, her fingers still on his suit jacket, her mouth tilted in a way I recognized too well, the way she smiled the night she first told me she wanted me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch any longer. I pulled out my phone. Opened my rideshare app. And I didn't go home. Instead, I took a ride to a motel 20 minutes from our house and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. Because I knew the moment I stepped through our front door again, everything would feel different. Everything was different. And I wasn't ready for the sound of her voice pretending like nothing had happened. The morning after the party, I unlocked the front door at 6:12 a.m. My key caught in the deadbolt like even the house wasn't ready to let me back in. The living room was dark, quiet, untouched, the same couch, same stack of unopened mail, same flickering lamp in the corner that I still hadn't fixed. Everything looked exactly like I left it, and yet, it didn't feel like mine anymore. I collapsed onto the couch in my crumpled clothes, still reeking of the bourbon I hadn't finished. My throat was dry, but not from thirst, from silence. I hadn't spoken to anyone in nearly 12 hours. Just watched. Thought. Replayed every second of Fallon's smile, every moment of Declan's smug confidence. I kept wondering when it had started. If it ever ended. At 8:49, I heard the garage door open. I stayed perfectly still. She came in humming, actually humming, with a to-go coffee in one hand and her phone in the other. She kicked her heels off at the door and walked into the kitchen like it was just another Saturday morning. No sign of guilt. Not a whisper of tension. Just Fallon in her natural habitat, dropping her keys in the bowl and stretching like she'd had a great night. When she saw me, she froze. But only for a second. "Oh," she said, setting down the coffee. "I thought you were still at your parents' or something." I stared at her. I wanted to ask why she thought I'd be at my parents'. I wanted to scream, "Why didn't you ask where I was last night? Why didn't you care?" But I didn't say anything. She came over, sat beside me, and ran her fingers through my hair. "You okay?" I flinched. Not on purpose. My body just rejected the touch. "You seem off," she said, like I was the one being strange. Then it hit me, the scent. She wasn't wearing her usual perfume. Fallon always wore a soft vanilla blend I'd gotten her for Christmas 3 years ago. This was different. Sharper. More expensive. Like hotel samples or a man's cologne she tried to cover up. My stomach twisted. "Long night?" I finally asked. She smiled. "You know how these parties go. We all stayed late, cleaned up, got drinks after. It turned into a whole thing." She said, "We," like it wasn't just her and him. I nodded, slowly. "Did Declan drive you home?" She blinked, just once, barely noticeable, and then shrugged. "No. I took a lift." Lie. I watched her walk upstairs, probably to shower off whatever evidence was left on her skin. And that's when I realized I couldn't keep pretending. Not to her. Not to myself. So I got up, opened my laptop, and started something I never thought I'd need. A folder. I titled it, "In Case I'm Not Crazy." Inside, I began collecting notes. Times. Dates. Screenshots of public LinkedIn posts they'd liked seconds apart. Her texts that said, staying late, when his calendar showed he was on site. A photo I secretly took at the party of the two of them standing too close by the drinks. It felt sick. Like I was building a case against someone I still loved. But I had to. Because if I was going to go down, I wanted the truth to drag her down with me. And then something happened I didn't expect. At 3:12 p.m., while she was asleep upstairs, I got a text from an unknown number. You don't know me. But you should really ask Fallon what happened in Denver last April. That was it. No name. No explanation. Just one line. And suddenly, the party wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the middle. I stared at the message for 5 minutes before my brain even registered it was real. It felt like a hallucination, like my suspicion had manifested into a ghost. But there it was, sitting on my screen like a trigger warning from the universe. You don't know me. But you should really ask Fallon what happened in Denver last April. My first instinct was to reply. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, typing and deleting some version of, "Who is this?" or "What do you mean?" But I didn't send anything. I couldn't. Because I was terrified of getting a real answer. What if it wasn't vague? What if it was something I couldn't unhear? I sat in silence, hearing Fallon's faint breathing from upstairs. I walked to the bottom of the steps and just stood there, listening. My wife, the woman I'd shared 1,000 dinners and secrets and lazy Sunday mornings with, was up there napping like her entire life wasn't rotting from the inside out. Denver. I tried to remember everything she told me about that trip. She'd been gone for 3 nights, a company conference she said was mandatory but boring. She told me there were workshops, networking lunches, and a final night mixer that she skipped because she was exhausted. I remembered texting her that night, asking if she wanted to video chat. She said she was in bed already. Too tired. Hair a mess. No makeup. I'd believed her. But that night came flooding back now, every frame sharpening in my memory. Her texts were short, delayed. She didn't say, "I love you," before bed. She sent me a selfie the next morning, and she was wearing makeup. Full eye makeup. In bed at 7:40 a.m. Who does that? Apparently, someone who wasn't alone. My hands were shaking again. That was becoming a pattern. I opened the hidden folder on my laptop and added a new document. Denver. I wrote down everything I remembered about the trip, pulled her old flight confirmation from our shared email, and started Googling the name of the conference. I found the hotel. Looked up photos. I was trying to match curtains from her selfie to hotel interiors like some desperate amateur detective. I felt pathetic. But I also felt alive. That text was fuel. Whoever sent it had cracked open a box I didn't know existed, and now all I wanted to do was rip off the lid and dump it out on the floor. By evening, Fallon was awake and back to pretending. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I said sure. She curled up next to me on the couch like she always did. Same blanket. Same position. She even made popcorn. She was either an incredibly skilled liar, or she genuinely didn't think I knew. Or maybe she wanted me to know, and this was all a test to see how long it would take for me to collapse. Halfway through the movie, something awful happened. She fell asleep on my shoulder. And she mumbled something. Clear as day. Tell him it was only once. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I felt cold all over. The kind of cold that doesn't come from weather, but from realizing the world you're standing in might not be real. She didn't stir. She just snuggled in deeper. I slowly slid out from under her, stood up, and walked out of the room. Tell him it was only once. So she had cheated. And she had lied. And maybe, if I hadn't caught her mid-dream confession, she would have kept lying for the rest of her life. I didn't know what scared me more, the betrayal, or how easily she could sleep after it. I went outside, sat on the back steps, and pulled out my phone. I stared at the mystery number again. This time, I replied. I'm listening. What happened in Denver? 3 dots appeared almost instantly. And then came the reply. It wasn't just April. Check September. The moment I read that second message, I felt the floor drop out beneath me. Check September. Like this was some game of months, like infidelity was a calendar event I just hadn't noticed. I sat there on the back steps gripping my phone with sweaty palms, the autumn air biting at my face, and I felt like someone had just handed me a loaded weapon. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The moment demanded something more than words, it demanded action. But what do you do when someone rips the blindfold off your eyes, and you realize the darkness was safer than the truth? Fallon was still asleep when I walked back inside. Blanket kicked off, mouth slightly open, phone glowing dimly in her hand. Her face looked peaceful. Almost angelic. And I hated her for it. My thoughts spiraled fast. September. What happened in September? I opened my notes app and started digging back through my own memories like crime scene evidence. We'd been to her cousin's wedding that month, out of state. A whole weekend trip. I remembered I'd gotten food poisoning the second night and stayed back at the hotel while she went to the reception alone. She had insisted I rest, even kissed my forehead and told me she'd bring cake back. She never did. I checked the dates. September 14th to 16th. I went back to our shared cloud storage. Fallon always took hundreds of photos, she was obsessed with documenting everything. But this time, I found barely a handful from the trip. Mostly of flowers and centerpieces. None of her. None of us. Nothing from the reception. Something about that felt staged. Controlled. Then I remembered something. A week after the wedding, she asked me if I could fix the sync between her old phone and the cloud, said it was acting weird. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Just typical tech issues. I had helped her transfer photos from the old phone to her current one using my laptop. And I never deleted the backup folder. I ran upstairs, heart pounding, pulled the external drive from my desk drawer, and plugged it into my laptop. The folder loaded. Most of it was harmless. Random screenshots. Grocery lists. Mirror selfies. Until I opened a folder simply labeled miscellaneous. The photos in there didn't have thumbnails. They were marked with random numbers, not dates. The first image loaded slowly, my hands trembling. It was her. In a black dress I'd never seen before. Standing in a hotel mirror. Hair down. Dark lipstick. And a text over the top of the photo that made my entire chest seize up. Don't be late. Room 509. I nearly dropped the laptop. My ears buzzed. My mouth went dry. I opened the next photo. Her hand. Holding a wine glass. A second hand, a man's hand, resting on her thigh. His watch was visible. I zoomed in. It wasn't mine. The next image was a video. My finger hovered over the play button for a full minute before I tapped it. The screen lit up with movement. Low lighting. Hotel curtains drawn. Fallon's voice, unmistakably hers, giggling softly. If this leaks, I swear. Then a man's voice. His voice. Declan. I'd leak it on purpose if I could keep you another night. I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't speculation anymore. This wasn't gut instinct or half-lies or sleep talk. This was concrete. Undeniable. I had the truth now, and it felt like poison in my lungs. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in silence, wondering how long she'd been pretending to love me while giving pieces of herself away to someone else. And then, for the first time since this all started, I thought, maybe this isn't just an affair. Maybe Fallon is living a double life, and I've been nothing but the decoy. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. I just sat in the corner of the guest room, laptop still open, video paused mid-frame, and stared at the floor like I was waiting for it to open up and swallow me. I'd seen enough. More than enough. But now that the door had been kicked wide open, I couldn't stop myself from walking straight into the fire. By morning, I'd made a decision. I couldn't confront her yet. Not while she still had the upper hand. I needed more, not because I doubted the truth, but because I wanted to control the narrative. I didn't want her spinning this into mistake or a one-time thing. I wanted undeniable, clock-stamped evidence. Not for court. Not even for closure. For me. For the version of me that had been lied to, manipulated, gaslit, and replaced with a shadow. Around 11:30 a.m., Fallon knocked on the guest room door. Eliot. Her voice was soft. Are you okay? I didn't answer. A moment later, she pushed the door open and stepped in. She looked tired. Almost worried. But I didn't trust anything I saw on her face anymore. I wondered if she'd practiced this expression in the mirror. If Declan had told her how to play it. If they laughed about this. About me. I was thinking, she said, fidgeting with her bracelet, we haven't been out in a while. Maybe we could get dinner tonight. Just you and me. Somewhere nice. I stared at her for a long time. She shifted uncomfortably under the silence. Dinner? Now. After what I'd seen. But then something in me clicked, and I smiled. I nodded. Yeah, I said. That sounds really nice. And just like that, I agreed to walk into a performance I already knew the ending to. But this time, I'd be the one writing the script. We went to a quiet Italian restaurant in a neighborhood she used to love. It was the kind of place you only went when you wanted to be seen, but not noticed. Fallon wore a wine-colored dress. Her makeup was subtle. No dark lipstick. No perfume that didn't belong to her. She was playing the part perfectly. Throughout dinner, she kept trying to reach for my hand. Asking about work. Laughing at things I wasn't even saying. I watched her try to glue the pieces back together, not realizing I'd already replaced the whole puzzle. Midway through the meal, I excused myself to the restroom, and that's when the Real plan kicked in. I didn't go to the restroom. I went outside. And I called the number. The one who had messaged me before. The stranger. The ghost in the machine. They picked up on the first ring. A woman's voice. Calm. Measured. I was wondering when you'd call. Who are you? I asked. My voice cracked. I didn't care. Let's just say, someone who's been where you are, she replied. Fallon's not who you think. And Declan? He's done this before. With other women. Other marriages. I've been keeping track. I swallowed hard. Why tell me? Why now? Because you're not the first husband she's lied to. But you might be the last. She told me to check Fallon's email. Said there was a secret account she used, a second inbox tied to a maiden name she never legally updated. She said the password was likely the name of her first dog, which she'd once mentioned at a work conference like a nervous tick. The woman even knew the breed. Before I could ask more, she hung up. Back at the table, Fallon looked up and smiled like we were in a movie. You okay? She asked. I smiled back, perfectly still. Yeah. Just had to make room for dessert. We ordered tiramisu. She leaned in and said she was glad we were reconnecting. I nodded. And under the table, I was already writing her old dog's name into the password field of an email account I wasn't supposed to know existed. One press of a button, and the door opened again. Dozens of emails. Labeled with initials. Time-stamped. Screenshots. Hotel confirmations. And worst of all, a folder titled Rules. Inside. A detailed guide. How to gaslight a spouse. How to erase digital footprints. And how to phase out a marriage without triggering legal attention. It wasn't just cheating. It was orchestration. Fallon wasn't having an affair. She was conducting a full-scale exit strategy. I don't know what it feels like to drown in real water. But sitting at that dinner table across from Fallon, pretending to listen to her talk about her coworker's baby shower while secretly reading emails that proved she was planning to leave me, it felt close. The secret inbox opened like a black hole. Every message sucked pieces of my reality into it, tearing down walls I didn't even know were there. Some were short. Simple. He suspects something. I'm going to pivot to distance and guilt, make it seem like he's the one pulling away. Others were horrifyingly specific. Like. Tactic update, he found lipstick in the car. I told him it was from a work event. He believed me. Phase 2 begins Monday. She was documenting this. Not emotionally. Not regretfully. Strategically. One email even included a calendar breakdown, color-coded, of which weekends were safe for Declan, and which ones she needed to appear more present at home to avoid suspicion. She had this down to a science. And I had been nothing more than an obstacle to navigate. As Fallon sat across from me, licking a dab of tiramisu cream from her spoon like she wasn't plotting to erase our marriage like a chalkboard, I fought the urge to scream. My leg was shaking under the table, but I kept smiling. I couldn't tip her off, not yet. That night, I lay beside her in bed pretending to sleep. Her breathing slowed. She shifted twice, murmured something in her dreams again, but this time it wasn't words. Just sounds. Like relief. Like comfort. I got out of bed at 2:37 a.m. Sat in the bathroom with the lights off and headphones in. Scrolled through more emails. Every click was like peeling another layer of my own skin. Then I found it. An email with a voice memo attached. Sent to someone named L. No subject. No text. I clicked play. It was Fallon's voice. She was whispering, like she'd recorded it in a hotel bathroom. I recognized the echo. Okay, so he's still clueless. Honestly, I almost told him tonight. But he did this sweet thing with dinner, and I couldn't. Pause. Soft laugh. God, I sound awful. But like, if you heard the way he talks about work. About spreadsheets. And lunch schedules. And socks. I'm not living like this for another 5 years. Another pause. He's a good guy. But I'm not in love with him anymore. I don't think I have been for a while. I just need Declan to lock in the relocation. Once that happens, I'm out. My stomach flipped. So that was the endgame. She wasn't just cheating. She was waiting for Declan to get promoted or transferred to some new office out of state, so she could use that as a springboard to abandon everything. Me. Our home. Our memories. Our marriage. I wanted to rage. To wake her up, hold the phone to her face, and ask, "Is this what I am to you? A layover?" But I didn't. Because somewhere deep down, a colder, quieter version of me had taken over. And that version had a plan. At 3:04 a.m., I created a new folder on my laptop. Not hidden. Not encrypted. Just bold. Labeled, Final Round. Inside, I moved everything. Photos. Screenshots. Emails. The recording. I even copied in our wedding photos and layered them with some of her recent messages. The contrast was unbearable. But necessary. Then I scheduled an email. To be sent the next evening. To Fallon. To Declan. To her parents. And to myself. It contained everything. Not as revenge. But as truth. A truth bomb with no timer. Just a promise. The subject line. Just one word. Unmasked. That morning, Fallon made pancakes. Hummed while flipping them. Kissed my cheek like she hadn't been actively planning to vanish. I told her I had a dentist appointment and would be out late. She nodded and told me to take my time. By the time she saw the email that night, I wouldn't be there. Because I wasn't just going to disappear. I was going to become the one thing she never expected. The ending she didn't control. The morning my scheduled email detonated, I was already halfway across the state line. I didn't slam doors. I didn't leave a note. I didn't even pack much. Just a single suitcase, my laptop, and a list of places I always said I wanted to see but never did, because I was too busy trying to keep a marriage from collapsing while the other person was tearing it down behind my back. At exactly 6 p.m., my phone buzzed once. A notification from my email client. Message sent. That was it. No drama. No confrontation. Just the truth, delivered clean. The screenshots. The recordings. The subject line that said more than 1,000 words could, unmasked. Fallon called me 12 times that night. Left voicemails, all of them spiraling through the 5 predictable stages. Shock. Denial. Anger. Fake tears. Guilt projection. On the last one, she whispered, "Eliot, please, we can fix this. Please come home." But I wasn't hers to beg anymore. I listened once. Deleted them all. The next morning, her mother called me. She didn't yell. She didn't defend Fallon. She just said, "I'm sorry. I wish I could say I was surprised." That told me everything. I checked into a quiet Airbnb by the coast. No city noise. Just wind and water. I sat on the balcony with coffee and watched the waves roll in, like they'd been waiting all this time for me to finally show up for my own life. It hurt, yes. Still does in ways I can't fully explain. But somewhere between the silence and the sunrise, I realized I hadn't lost anything that wasn't already gone a long time ago. I gained something instead. A chance to start over. A new chapter, not written out of bitterness or revenge, but peace. I started freelance consulting. Something I'd always wanted to try but never had the guts to do. I made new friends, people who liked me without needing me to shrink. I read again. Traveled solo for the first time. Took cooking classes. Learned how to breathe without needing someone to tell me I was worthy of air. As for Fallon, I don't know where she is. I don't care. She got the ending she earned. And I got the beginning I never thought I deserved. Thanks for sticking through the entire story. Now it's your turn. Have you ever walked away from someone who never believed you could? Drop your moment in the comments. We want to hear it. You're watching Reddit Confessions, the channel where real stories unfold and sometimes, just sometimes, we get to write the final chapter ourselves. Until next time.